A painful and frustrating season finally comes to an end for the Atlanta Braves as Max Fried's unable to get it done in what could be his final start in a Braves uniform. And despite the best efforts from Michael Harris and the Braves bullpen, they get swept by the Padres in the NL Wildcard Series. We'll talk about Game 2. I'll give you my thoughts on the series overall and set you up for what could be happening this offseason. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you're an everydayer or you make it your first listen of the day, whatever the case may be. I know I haven't gotten to those comments lately, but I see all of them. I read them all. Thank you all for leaving those comments down there. It's just been a crazy week here on the podcast and overall, but I appreciate everybody who chips in to help the show. Thank you for all those who listen on the audio version as well. If you could leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's episode, we're going to recap Game 2 of the series. We'll also just talk about the series overall, what went wrong for this Atlanta Braves team, and we'll take a peek at what could be coming your way this offseason. Is it the last start for Max Fried in a Braves uniform? All that coming your way on today's episode of Locked On Braves. And this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Well, the Braves season does come to an end, and I think most people probably would have predicted that coming into this series, although there's always a chance, there's always a hope. Look at what the Royals and Tigers are doing over on the other side. But it does come to an end, a 5-4 loss to the San Diego Padres, and give a lot of credit to the Padres. They're a great team. And we talked about it in our preview episode of this series. I think they're probably the most well-rounded team in the postseason right now, and certainly have a very good chance of winning it all when you look at just how deep their pitching staff is, although they got a little injury themselves to deal with at the moment with just Joe Musgrove leaving this game. But that bullpen is just so deep. They got 5-6 arms. They got arms they didn't really even have to use in these first two games that they could throw out there that are still really good. So it's a lot of arms, a lot of pitching the Padres have. And that lineup, I just think, is one that can have a lot of success in the postseason. They don't strike out a lot. They hit for average, but there's also some power in there too. Like you saw, guys like Tatis and apparently Higashioka, who just apparently does nothing but hit home runs against the Atlanta Braves in the postseason. So that Padres team is really good. You knew it was going to be a tough matchup for the Braves. It's an unfortunate one. We'll go back to that final day of the regular season, the extra day of the regular season. And, the Mets winning that first game, it was kind of up to them whether they were going to go play Milwaukee or go play San Diego. And look, we've talked about it. I think the Mets basically handed the Braves that second game. I don't think they wanted any part of going out to San Diego to place the Padres. Now they got their own situation to handle there in Milwaukee. That's the only series going to a Game 3. But if you would have asked me, and you did ask me, who would I rather play? I would have said the Brewers. I think we're the better matchup for the Atlanta Braves. This Padres team's been the best team in baseball after the All-Star break. And like I said, I just think they're one of the more well-rounded teams left in the postseason or in all of baseball. So again, it was a tough break for the Braves, a tough matchup, but it's a season that, in my mind, mercifully comes to an end. And I know a lot of Braves fans are probably feeling that way today. I'm going to get more into this on Monday. On Monday, I'm going to do a full season recap episode, looking back at the numbers from 2024, talking about all the injuries, all the pain. But I feel pretty confident in telling you right now, this is probably the least fun I've had watching a Braves team in a long time, which is crazy to say, considering they won 89 games, considering they made the postseason. It feels odd to even say that this season just wasn't fun. But if you were along for the ride and you were with me here every day and you were watching this team every day, I would imagine many of you feel the same way. It wasn't a fun season. And again, we'll get into more of that on Monday's episode. And I understand those who maybe aren't Braves fans coming in here and teams that didn't make the postseason and hearing me say that and hearing other Braves fans say that and think that's crazy. But again, if you watch the entire season and you saw what the Braves, went through to get here, the players that they've lost, I think you'd agree with me that this just wasn't a very fun season. You took a lot of the fun out of that lineup because of injuries, and it just felt like pulling teeth and nail trying to even get to the postseason and get to 89 wins. And even when they won games, it wasn't always the prettiest. It's just, again, it felt like a real grind. And that's what a lot of people have talked about. It was just an absolute grind for this team to even get to that point, which again is a huge credit to them to be able to grind through that, losing all of those, exciting and key players, those dynamic players, and being able to win 89 games and get to the postseason. I know a lot of people want to get on Brian Snitker, get on the coaching staff. You saw this team. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses. I think they could have been better even with what they had. But still, with everything that they had to go through to get to 89 wins, to get to the postseason, I think it was a huge accomplishment for this coaching staff. I'm not saying they were perfect. I'm not saying they didn't make some mistakes along the way that we've pointed out in many podcasts. But I still think they deserve a lot of credit for getting what they did out of this team and accomplishing what they did with this team. But it was rough. And I know a lot of Braves fans feel that way. I've seen many of you in the comments section saying, just end it. Just end this season. Just end this offense. I can't watch it anymore. And I get that. And as a fan, I feel that. And I understand that. It has been hard to watch this team, especially offensively, for most of this season. Now let's focus on game 2 here for a minute. Max Fried in what could be his last start in a Braves uniform. 2 innings, 8 hits, no walks, 5 earned runs, 2 strikeouts, 1 home run, a solo shot, and 45 pitches. He got into a jam in the first inning, was able to get out of it, but threw 20 pitches and then got the first 2 outs of the second inning. And you're thinking, okay, Max Fried's going to settle in here. He's getting some of that weak contact for outs. But then he gave up a home run to Higashi. Again, I don't know what's going on with that guy. He just is a different player when he faces the Braves. But then everything just fell apart. And the Higashioka home run, it feels like an innocent solo 2-out home run. It's fine. You get the next guy out. You kind of move on. And things just, again, you got a solid hit by Arise, but then you get a couple of soft infield hits, and that can happen with Max Fried sometimes. I said I like the matchup coming in because he's a guy that doesn't have to rely on strikeouts, and he's okay pitching to contact. But I said with that, he has to get some batted ball luck behind him, and he just didn't at the beginning of that inning. Now, after that, he left a sweeper up to Machado that got crushed. He left a sinker middle to Jackson Merrill that got crushed and got over the head of Michael Harris. So they did hit some hard balls in that inning, but when you compound the soft singles, infield singles going for hits, and then making some mistakes and leaving some pitches out again, and probably getting tired after a long first inning, and then what turned out to be a long second inning, that can sometimes lead to mistakes by pitchers, and it just everything fell apart. A 5-run inning, all with 2 outs, and that was essentially the game. The Braves made a comeback late, but you gave up 5 runs in the second inning. That was all the Padres got in this one. And it's an unfortunate way for Max Fried if this is going to be his going out and his last start in a Braves uniform. Certainly, hate to see it be like that and a start like that. And I do have to mention he did get hit by a comebacker by Tatis in the first inning, and Brian Snitker said in an in-game interview that that was causing him some pain and kind of led to the reasoning why they took him out after 2 innings, besides the fact that he had already given up 5 runs. But so again, it's what else in 2024 but dealing with a another injury, and what else but the Braves in the postseason dealing with another pitcher injury. And again, it's just, I talked about it on yesterday's episode when we discussed Chris Sale. It's just frustrating, and I don't know what else the Braves can do about it, but it's 3 years in a row now you've had to deal with at least one of your top pitchers being banged up, questionable going into the postseason. But the bullpen was fantastic in this series. The bullpen was amazing. Whatever great adjective you want to use, the bullpen did it. Daysbel Hernandez, 2 1/3 innings, 3 strikeouts. He's going to be a big part of the bullpen next year. He threw 42 pitches. That was huge. And again, kept the team in the game. The bullpen covered 12.2 innings out of the 16 innings the Braves pitched in this series, and they were fantastic. They allowed 1 run on 3 hits in 12 2/3 innings. 1 run on 3 hits. One of those hits being a solo home run by, you guessed it, Higashioka off Luke Jackson. I mean, the bullpen did its job. They kept this team in the game, but as was the case all year long, just not enough by the offense. We'll talk more about the offense here next, and I'll give you my thoughts on this series as a whole. We'll do that here next. For those of us who want to thrive on getting stuff done, including workouts, every minute counts, that's why you need TonaI, the smart strength training system that takes the guesswork out of working out so you can make sure you're making the most of every rep. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With TonaI, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you, and they're available with the amount of time that you have. TonaI is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps get you stronger. Powered by AI, TonaI learns every rep so it can deliver personalized workouts. And right now, TonaI is offering our listeners $200 off your TonaI purchase with promo code LockedOnMLB. That's TonaI.com and use promo code LockedOnMLB for $20 off your purchase. Again, that's TonaI.com, promo code LockedOnMLB for $200 off. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. You want to keep up with what's happening with the rest of the postseason, which we'll continue to do here, but you want a more extensive recap on the postseason, you can go check out Locked On MLB. You find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team and your teams each and every day. Now, we will have a mailbag episode on Friday, so look for my post from LockedOn_Braves on X. Submit your question to that. I really want your questions more geared towards this past season. Before we really turn the page to the offseason. I know it's going to be hard to do, but if you could kind of submit some questions asking more about 2024, what went wrong, maybe some of your questions about the season overall, what the Braves could have done different, maybe what they could have done different in this series. We really want our mailbag episode on Friday to be geared towards 2024, again, before we turn the page to 2025. Let's get back into game 2, though, real quickly and talk about the offense. You had a little small ball to start, and you take an early lead, and that felt great. Again, after losing game 1, getting shut out, coming out in the first inning, putting a run on the board, a leadoff double by Harris. Ozzie moves him over. Ozuna brings him in. 1-0. Max Fried on the mound. I'm feeling pretty good at this moment. And that felt really, really good to have a little small ball, take an early lead. You got Max Fried on the mound. But the problem with this offense, it's basically nothing for the next 4 innings outside of a solo home run by Jorge Soler to begin an inning. You just can't go quiet, especially after you do give up a 5 spot. And in both of these games, you fell behind early, but you still had plenty of at-bats left to play with to chip away to get back in the game. And that Soler home run certainly helped. It took a 5-1 game to a 5-2 game, and you felt like the Braves had a puncher's chance. But for me, it was really, over that 4-inning stretch after the first inning where, again, you just didn't do anything outside of the Soler solo home run to try to push the issue, to get a runner on, to make something happen, to try and chip away. And that's kind of been the frustration with this offense all year long, is just they're waiting on that 2-run homer. Again, it's the same thing. Can you score without the home runs, which is why it's great. We saw them do that in the first inning. They scored 3 more runs the rest of the game. They all came on home runs. It's just, if you have everybody, and we're going to have a long discussion about this in the offseason, many discussions about this in the offseason, about the offensive philosophy. But when you're so dependent to score in one way, it really limits what you can do offensively when you don't have everybody healthy. Look, when Ronald's healthy and in the lineup, Riley, Ozuna, Olsen, Ozzie, you throw in Soler, and you're going to hit 250 to 300 home runs in the year, maybe you can live by that. Although we've seen the last 2 postseasons that wasn't great. But again, you go back to 2021, and that team won because they hit a lot of home runs and a lot of key home runs in that postseason. Home runs are the best and most efficient way to score. But you got to be a little bit more dynamic, especially when you're missing those key guys in your lineup. And again, I know I'm beating a dead horse once again, but this Braves offense just never adjusted. And there wasn't enough push inning to inning. And the sixth inning was really the moment for me where I felt like the Braves finally had good at-bats. Those were the best at-bats I saw in this series from Braves hitters, was in that sixth inning. Facing one of the best strikeout pitchers, a guy in Estrada with a 37% strikeout rate. Arcia starts off the inning, hits an absolute rocket at 100 miles per hour, a line out right to the left fielder. That's tough, but look, great contact, not much you can do about it. Michael Harris, he hits the softest hit of the ball, 86 miles per hour, but it goes down for a single. And once again, Michael Harris is on base with one out. I guess it really doesn't matter how many outs there are, but Michael Harris is on base. He doesn't run. Somebody else gets a hit later in the inning, and you don't score because you don't run. And look, I'm going to talk more about Michael Harris in a second, but that's something that has to improve in his game. And again, he had a hamstring injury this season that maybe that was holding him back a little bit. He was terrible at stealing bases this year. Again, we'll talk about it more in a second. But it was the third opportunity in this series where if Michael Harris was able to steal a base, a hit followed him that likely would have produced a run. And in a one-run game like this, that turns out to be huge. But Michael Harris does get on base. Ozzie hits a one-hopper, 99 miles per hour. Machado makes a great play on it, as he does. He's a great defensive third baseman. I've seen a lot of people talk about the play at second base. It wasn't even close, and I somewhat agree with that. When Machado threw that ball and it bounced twice over there, I thought that's got to be a close play at second base with Michael Harris running, and it wasn't. I don't know. I haven't seen an angle to see, if Michael got a bad read on it, he didn't take off immediately, or whatever the case may be. But I thought that would be a much closer play at second. It ended up being a close play at first base too, which is just crazy. I don't think there was ever any doubt that Ozzie was going to beat it out. But again, just an incredible play and more tough luck in that inning. And then Ozuna rips the single at 105.3 miles per hour. And then with 2 on, 2 outs, Matt Olson hits the ball 102.5 miles per hour on the line right to the left fielder. 5 balls in play that inning with an expected batting average of 390 or higher. And the Braves got a pair of singles and no runs. And look, I get it. I hear your comments. People are tired of the exit velocity stat, and it's not the end-all be-all. You have to combine it with launch angle and sweet spot, and I get all that. I don't understand the people that say they don't like the exit velocity stat. It's meaningless. What do you want them to do? You want them to hit the ball softer? I don't understand that line of thinking. To me, in my mind, I get it. There's an approach thing when it comes to 2 outs and not overswinging and trying to put the ball in play, but that wasn't the case here. These are swings earlier in the at bat when you're getting a pitch that you want, you're squaring it up, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. It's just unfortunate. Now, my problem with this, and I talked about on the postcast, is this was 1 inning that they did this. This was 1 inning out of 9 that they had consistent good at bats up and down. You have to be able to do that more consistently because this is a game of baseball and it is a bit random sometimes, but it's still, the thought still plays and the facts still show the more often you hit the ball hard and hit it on a line, the better results you're going to get. And I know that's crazy to say when you saw what happened in the second inning for the Padres, where a couple of soft infield singles lead to a big inning for them, but that's not the norm. That is not typically going to be the case, even though it feels like it happens a lot against the Braves. But either way, going back to that 6th inning, to me, that was the inning because the Braves put up some great at-bats against a really good pitcher and got nothing to show for it. And then Michael Harris gets them within 1 run with a 2-run shot in the 8th inning. As again, the offense showed some fight in this one. And Michael Harris had a great postseason and a great end to his season. The bottom of the lineup really killed the Braves in this one. They went 1 for 14 with 6 strikeouts. That's where those injuries really come into play. Not having an Acuna and a Riley, it means you got a Laureano, who's, again, been great, but then you got an Urshela, you got a Sean Murphy, who just never got it going this year, Orlando Arcia, who had a hit and scored in this game, and then Travis d'Arnaud comes on to end it and swings the first pitch and pops it up into foul territory. So the bottom of the lineup, was really tough. I thought the guys at the top did a pretty good job, although Ozzie and Olson went hitless in this one, despite some good swings by Matt Olson in particular. But the Braves lose. They lose 5-4, a 1-run loss. Seems like a fitting way, to end what's been a pretty frustrating season for the Braves and for Braves fans. Next, we'll take a look at the series overall, give you some of my thoughts, talk about what's happening around the postseason, and again, a little preview of what's on tap for this offseason, which should be a pretty busy one, I think, for the Atlanta Braves. We'll discuss that here next. This episode of Locked On Braves is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Explore all the U.S. cities you currently want to go out and visit, especially the off season's here now. You're a Braves fan. You can go take your trips now. The season is over. Go take your spouse, your family somewhere. Take a trip for yourself, whatever you want to do. And when you do that, make sure that you use Booking.com with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. On Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rivals city. You got the postseason happening right now. If you just love baseball like I do and you're going to continue to watch every game the rest of the way, maybe you want to go watch one of these games in a city that you've never been to. Again, make your travel plans through Booking.com. Book today on Booking.com or in the Booking.com app. So the Braves go out 2-0 in a wild card series. They lose to the Padres, and their 2024 season comes to an end. We talked about it coming in. We talked about at the top of this episode, the uphill battle the Braves faced in this one, losing Chris Sale the last day of the season, facing a very good Padres team that had been the best team in baseball in the second half after the All-Star break. You knew the Braves were going to have to play perfect baseball to win this series, to have a chance. And I think there's plenty of blame to go around. And I know a lot of fans want to do that today. What's to blame? Why did they lose this series? I think there's plenty to go around. You can certainly blame Max Fried for not being able to get out of that second inning and limiting the damage. You can blame the offense for not doing anything in game one and then not doing enough in game two. Fact is, the Padres were just a better team. And, that's a sad reality, I think, to face, but Padres were just a better team. The Braves just didn't have it this year. And that's, again, a tough pill to swallow, but I think it's just the reality. Could the Braves won this series? Yeah, certainly could have. Do I think the Tigers are a better team than the Astros? No, I don't. I think the Astros are a better team than the Detroit Tigers, and they just got swept by them. I mean, that's baseball sometimes, but in this case, in this scenario, I do think the Padres are the better team. But you get into a postseason series, you got a 3-game series to try to figure it out. Baseball's not meant to be played that way. We've been down that road before, but it is the postseason. It's exciting. I get it. It is a fan experience meant to build drama and excitement, and it excels at that. But it doesn't always give a great indication of who the better team is. To do that in baseball, it has to be played over a longer stretch than just 3-game series, a 5-game series, even a 7-game series. But either way, again, back to the point, the Padres were the better team, and I thought the better team won in this case. I was honestly glad to see the Braves show some fight, especially in the second game. If you want to look at some positives from the series, to my mind, there were two. The bullpen was, again, I'm running out of adjectives to use, but they were lights out. They were incredible. They gave this team a fighting chance in this series. Starting pitching is what carried you all year long. You got 3 1/3 innings from your starters in this series. Now, I get that A.J. Smith-Shawver game one start was a unique situation. Hadn't really been starting for the Braves. You'd love to have Chris Sale there, and certainly he probably is going to give you more innings than that. But still, starting pitching is what carried you, and you got 3 1/3 innings out of your starters in these 2 games. But despite that, I really don't think you can blame the pitching too much because the bullpen was so good, and it gave the team a chance in both of these games. So again, one positive, the bullpen was amazing and gave you a chance to win. The other positive for me was Michael Harris. Michael Harris was 1 for 27 in the first 2 postseasons that he played in the last 2 years against the Phillies. 1 for 27. He was 5 for 8 in these 2 games with a double and a home run. So he put all of that postseason demons behind him and had a huge series, 2-game series, a small stretch for the Atlanta Braves. And he finished the year extremely hot as well. He slashed .316, .344, .579 in September with 8 home runs. But here's what I need to see from Michael Harris next year. I need to see him stay healthy all year. He hasn't been able to do that the past 2 seasons. It happened at the beginning of last year and then the slow start, but then he finally picked it up. This year he got off to a really good start. then kind of slowed down, then had the injury, then was a little slow coming back, and then finished strong. I need to see him put a complete year together and stay healthy. I need to see him win a Gold Glove. I think to do that, it's part of staying healthy too and just being out there. And there's a lot of competition in the National League. But most importantly, what I need to see Michael Harris improve on this offseason and work on and going into next year, he has to be a stolen base threat. This team, and again, we're going to talk about it a lot this offseason, they've got to find other ways to score. Again, if everybody's healthy and you're getting all these home runs, that's great. But when those aren't there, you got to find other ways to score. And when you get into these postseason series, you got to be able to find other ways to score and push a run across in addition to getting that 2-run homer. If Michael Harris is able to steal a base early in this game and come in on a hit, then that 2-run homer he hits later is much more meaningful. But because you weren't able to scratch across a run in one of those innings when you had a base runner on and a fast runner on and the ability to do something, then you miss that opportunity when you do get that home run. And so that's got to become a bigger part of his game. He was just 9 for 15 on stolen bases this year. And again, maybe the hamstring plays into that a little bit and slowed him down after coming back from that and not able to run as much, or maybe not able to run as well. I think it's more of just him not being a good base stealer. And look, there are fast people that just aren't good at stealing bases, but that is something that you can improve on. And I apologize, he got that 1 stolen base on the doubleheader the last day, so he was 10 for 16 and stealing bases this year. He's got to easily get to 20 stolen bases, which he did the 2 previous years. I think he's got to do even more than that. In 2023, he was 20 for 24 of stealing bases. In 2022, he was 20 of 22. So, he's shown the ability to be able to steal bases. And again, I don't know how much that hamstring really affected him, but that has to be a part of his game going forward. But this wasn't meant to be a session to bash on Michael Harris, who was the biggest bright spot in my mind in this 2-game postseason run that the Braves had. And then just overall on the series, on the postseason, it's a different feeling this year getting eliminated. Again, I think most of us kind of expected it, and I think expectations were very low. Again, you get in, you got a chance, and I still felt like the Braves had a chance. They were going to have great pitching, and they didn't get that out of their starters. But I think most of you would agree that the feeling is much different this year than it was the last 2 years, where you expected to win a World Series going in. This year, we were just happy to be there and happy to have a chance. So again, it's a different feeling. It's also, though, a missed opportunity. It's another opportunity in this window with all this talent that you have on this Braves team that you don't make at least a run in the postseason. Don't even at least get to the NLCS. And maybe that doesn't mean something to a lot of people, but I think you feel better about this run the Braves are in if you got more than 2 NLCS appearances. And I think that's the frustrating part of, what happened in those early 2000s too. It's, you knew the run was coming to an end there, but it's just every year you were getting in and getting bounced in the first round. And, at some point that gets a little old. You want to at least see your team advance, get to that NLCS round, get to the World Series. Again, it still doesn't feel much better to lose in those rounds, but to at least have, something to get excited about and something to continue, on your season. Braves just haven't got a lot of that lately. Outside of 2020 and 2021, there hasn't really been much of that in the last 20 years or so. And I think that's, gotten to Braves fans in a major way. And again, not much you really do about it this year because of the injuries that really hurt your opportunity to advance and make a run. But it still is. It's in this window that we all think the Braves are in, where they have a chance to win a World Series every year. And it's another missed opportunity. So we turn our page a little bit. I'm going to come back on Monday. We'll have a mailbag podcast on Friday. Like I said, I really want those questions to be geared toward 2024. And then on Monday, I'm going to come back and give my final thoughts on the season overall, not just the postseason, but the 2024 season. We'll look at some stats, injuries, everything that happened in 2024, and then what the plan is for that the rest of October. We're going to do some individual player reviews and previews. So we'll talk about their 2024 season, what we expect for them going forward. Will they be part of this team going forward? Will they be traded? whatever the case may be, especially with a Sean Murphy, Jorge Soler. That's really going to be the rest of October. Again, I'll recap the entire season on Monday, and then we'll get into some player reviews and previews for what to expect for them going forward. So again, make sure you're subscribed here to Locked On Braves. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason. I don't know how many moves there's actually going to be made. I think there's a real question about payroll and if the Braves are going to get under the luxury tax and avoid getting that tax penalty for a third year, which significantly increases those penalties. I think that's going to be a big storyline. Max Fried is going to be a big storyline. The two guys I mentioned a minute ago, Sean Murphy, Jorge Soler. What do you do with those two guys? Do you run it back with them again? Do you try to move either of them? What's the plan with Jared Kelenic going forward? What's the status of Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna Jr.? What can you expect from Ronald Acuna Jr. now that he's had surgery on both ACLs? So there's a lot to talk about this offseason. And again, what should be a very entertaining offseason at the very least. So again, make sure you're subscribed here at Locked On Braves. We'll have you covered all offseason long. We're not going anywhere. We'll have 4 to 5 episodes a week for most of the offseason. We'll take a break around the Christmas time and still have 3 episodes a week. But again, we'll still have you covered all off season long. But thank you for riding with me all year long. It's been an incredible season for the podcast. Again, as rough as it has been, we've continued to grow. The views have continued to get better and better. And that's all thanks to you and just your continued support. Again, every time you hit that thumbs up button, every time you comment down below, every time you share it with a friend, every time you retweet a post on X, whatever the case may be, you help us here at Locked On Braves and you help us grow this community. So thank you again for riding with me through another season, my third full season here on Locked On Braves. Started in the 2021 postseason, which was a great time to jump in. Would love to get back to that once again. It's been a grueling season. And again, thank you for going through it with me on a grind. Again, I'm a fan too. And it's been hard sometimes to get on this microphone after some of these games and talk about, how rough it's been for this team offensively. But thank you for tuning in each and every day here on the podcast. Again, I cannot thank you enough. Hopefully you don't go anywhere. Again, going to have a lot coming your way this offseason. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, all the good things to continue to support us here at Locked On Braves. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.